news to report in the college football world. Longtime BYU coach LaVell Edwards has died at the age of 86. His wife of 65 years, Patty, told the Provo Daily Herald that Edwards broke his hip on Christmas Eve. Edwards coached the Cougars from 1972 to 2000 and won a national championship in 1984. In 29 seasons at BYU, Edwards won 257 games, making him the 7th all-time winningest coach in college football history. Among some of his more notable accolades, twice earning National Coach of the Year honors. Look at his coaching tree: Mike Holmgren, Andy Reid, Brian Billick, Kyle Whittingham, Mike Leach. I mean, just an impressive resume. During his Cougar program, he had a Heisman Trophy winner. He had 34 All-Americans, 5 Davey O'Brien Trophy winners, and as such, in 2004, Edwards was immortalized in the football world, inducted into the National Football Foundation and College Hall of Fame.
You know, El, you do this job long enough, and eventually, unfortunately, there will come a day when you have to speak about someone very dear to you passing away. And for two of our colleagues here at ESPN, that moment is right now. Trevor Matich played for LaVell Edwards at BYU, as did Steve Young. And he's also joined us here on the phone. And Steve, let me start with you. What did LaVell Edwards mean to you personally, and also that BYU football program?
Yeah, you know, we know that LaVell was struggling the last 6 months, and I actually was driving down to Provo. I talked to his wife Patty yesterday and realized that this might happen, and rushed into town, and now I'm finding out as I drive down that he passed. So tough time for all of us. I think if you take some quick perspective, the number one quality that Coach had was a gift. I'm going to say it's from heaven, that he has the ability to look at you and get a sense of you and be able to have a vision for your future, to see things that you didn't see, to see potential in you that you didn't know about. And I think that he was able to give that to Trevor. Will tell you about it. We all experienced it through and it was personal. It wasn't like a general idea that you're going to be a great player. It was personal to you. And I had many experiences as I played at BYU where he had to look at me in the eye and say, "Look, you're going to be great." I was like, "Are you sure, Coach? Because I don't feel like it right now." And he had an ability of like, again, as you can see around the corner, and it was individual. And then the ultimate, you know, football is just so many. It's the ultimate people sport. And you have to have the people skills. He was the ultimate people skills. It was a gift, and I think that's why he had so many coaches come from his tree, because they saw what you needed to be, how you needed to act as a coach to really be great. You could be a tough taskmaster. You could be a great X's and O's guy, but you got to be great with people. And he was always the best. And he was like Johnny Appleseed, just spreading seeds of goodwill and positivity, and he took, and the other thing he did is he took a program that was not obscure, but the WAC was, 1965 or 70, was not well known, and by the time he left that program, it was nationally recognized. Not many great coaches that took programs from obscurity to national prominence, and so if you name the other great coaches in college, he's one of those rare guys that made that track, that did that. And in many ways a pioneer, and the effect it's had on BYU, and it's a singular effect. We're all going to spend the next few days and weeks just reveling in the experiences we had with LaVell. Generations of BYU fans, everywhere, even at ESPN, I'll run into somebody that was coaching in college at that time that knew LaVell, and everyone loved him. I mean, there was never anybody that didn't say, "Oh, how's Coach? How's he feeling? Give him my best." I mean, from Nike guys to ESPN guys to other coaches around his tree. I mean, everyone just wanted to know how. And so that's the legacy, and we're going to revel in that over the next days and weeks.
Trevor, when you hear the name LaVell Edwards, what immediately comes to your mind?
Well, I think of the legacy of LaVell Edwards, and Steve talked about the legacy on the field and the winning, and that's important because it's hard to win at all, much less win as consistently as LaVell did. But really, to me, the legacy of LaVell Edwards was brought home when, a number of years ago, when they opened their new facility and there was the Hall of Fame there with the museum and the trophy cases. When I went to see that for the first time, and I stood back away from some of the football trophy cases, and I saw some fathers who played for LaVell in those years bring their children to stand outside the cases and look through the glass at the trophies that they, the fathers, won. And the kids were so excited to see the trophy. And it dawned on me at that point that really the legacy of LaVell Edwards was not the trophy inside the case. It's that father standing there outside the case. Because wives have better husbands. Children have better fathers. Because of the way LaVell Edwards would mentor. And not just guide you and steer you and make you go. He would mentor in a way that you found your own way. He just made sure you stayed within the lines. I mean, when I was a freshman, I thought I was a real hot shot. And so I let my hair grow a little longer than the honor code would allow. But I thought I was cool and I could do it. LaVell let it go for a little while. And then finally, he just called me into his office. Never said a word about my hair. He just looked at my hair. And he looked me in the eye and he said, all right, you got that out of your system? I'm like, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Didn't say a word after that. I left and got it cut that day. But with LaVell, it was so important to me that he respects me. And that is a different kind of leadership and mentoring than someone who will make you respect them. And I think that in delivering that to his players, he made them better players. He allowed them to maximize themselves, but more than that, he made them better husbands, better fathers, better men. And that's the trophy. That's the legacy of LaVell Edwards.
You know, it's rare that we can actually say that a coach changed the game of football, but LaVell Edwards did that when he got to BYU. You go back to 1972, early part of the 70s, it was a very run-dominated offense, but he instilled a drop-back quarterback offense to great success. You take a look at some of the names of quarterbacks that played for him, including, of course, Steve Young, Jim McMahon, Mark Wilson, Ty Detmer, Steve Sarkisian, so many players who were successful that led a team to a national championship or won a Heisman, as Ty Detmer did back in 1990. Steve, you were one of those people that thrived under LaVell Edwards' system. How did he revolutionize college football?
He was throwing the ball. I mean, Wishbone was the hot offense in the early 70s. And you found a team that was, Stanford was messing with it a little bit, and University of Miami a little bit. But BYU was throwing the football and differentiated itself. And we didn't have, if you filled up all of our athletic ability, and then you filled up with the teams that we were playing and beating, we wouldn't match. But we had an advantage because we were throwing the football. We were the West Coast offense before the West Coast offense. We were the guys that would drop it back and throw it. I mean, Gifford Nielsen was throwing the ball like crazy in 1976 and 77. Mark Wilson was breaking records throwing the football. And so he was committed to it. And he took some heat for it. I mean, it wasn't like LaVell was famous in 1972 when he started doing that, or 68. He was like, this is what we're going to do. It's going to be a differentiating factor. And so he brought on coaches who were revolutionary in college football, in throwing the football. And so now you look at the sport today, it's completely the opposite. And everybody's throwing football. But at the time, if you wanted to play pro football as a quarterback, you wanted to go to Stanford, University of Miami, or BYU. Those are three guys that were ahead of the game.
Yeah, and the reason that he did that was because he had to. He understood the kind of players that he had. We couldn't line up and just smash opponents on the other side. I remember my freshman year, we played Indiana in the bowl game, the Holiday Bowl. And I looked in the media guide at our guys, our stars, and they had like normal necks, like if you were a banker or an accountant. Then I look at the Indiana players with those Big Ten necks that look like legs. They started at your ears and went out your shoulder. I thought, there's no way in the world we're going to compete with guys like this. When in the 4 years that I played, with my mission in the middle of it, we lost 3 games. And a lot of those games were to teams like that. And it was because LaVell Edwards understood how to get the most out of the guys that he had. And at the end of it all, we weren't tricking people. Because at the end of it all, guys like Steve Young, guys like Robbie Bosco, guys like, guys that win the Outland Trophy were coming to BYU. And it was because they saw that they could win under LaVell.
Steve, you take a look at the state of Utah as a whole. I mean, he's a lifer in Utah from high school. He started his career in high school coach. Of course, was assistant coach at BYU before becoming the head coach there. What does he mean to that state? And when you go back and visit with the people who still live there?
I mean, think about it. It's generations of football fans. I had that run with the 49ers, and I was half of it, and then, but the other half in the early and through the 80s. And I run into 49er fans all the time. That's only just 1 or 2 generations, and it's visceral, their reaction, because they were part of something that they lived through, that they enjoyed, and I sat there and went, BYU for LaVell, it's double that. It's 30 years, it's 45 years of greatness that he brought to the state and football and prominence. And it's just, people are gonna go, oh, do you remember Texas A&M? Oh, do you remember UCLA? Oh, do you remember the game, the Holiday Bowl against SMU? People are gonna go through that again, and we're gonna all revel in it because we are all lived, it's usually a couple generations that loved a certain player, a certain coach. This is gonna be multi-generational. This will be grandparents, grandsons, and even great-grandsons that were a part of LaVell. There won't be people telling them about LaVell. It'll be like, we experienced it together. And so when you talk about its impact, it's over a long period of time, and it was excellence throughout. And so that's going to have a strong reaction for a lot of people in the state. And he crossed one. We had a big rivalry with Utah, but LaVell always built it as a friendly, brotherly rivalry. And because of that, the people at Utah respect LaVell. They love LaVell. The people of Utah State love LaVell. It's where he went to school. And so we talk about the state. It's not just BYU. People will really, just respect and love the man all throughout the state. And so it's going to be a celebration of a life well lived. I mean, it really, in every way, Trevor mentions it about how his impact was different in each of us as human beings and who we can be in our potential and on the field as well. And so we're going to have this like a statewide celebration. We might have a LaVell Edwards Day, because it's that kind of an impact. And so as I went driving down to try to race to see him before he passed, that's what I was thinking about, is the impact he's had, not just with me, but with just literally millions of people.
Steve, you and I played at the same time with LaVell. Your senior year, my junior year, I was center. And the thing about LaVell going forward beyond that was that we were part of that bunch that kind of built up BYU at that time, leading towards the national championship. And after that, LaVell got offers from other much bigger college football names and offers from the NFL. And he chose to stay at BYU and make a life there. That's one of the reasons that everything Steve is talking about is something that we may not see again. Because LaVell stayed in one place and sustained his success over many, many decades. So players that played for him, their children came up and played for him. And then their children were part of the picture as well. And you can't have the kind of conversation that Steve just had without a coach that stays in one spot and succeeds at a high level for a long time. It was a rare thing then, and we may never see it again.
Trevor Matich, Steve, oh yeah, sure, Steve, go on in.
LaVell passed away in his home this morning. The same home that Patty had Gifford Nielsen up for dinner in the mid-'70s. Patty would have players up all the time. And so it's the same home. He never moved, not one time. He passed away today. He lived in it for 50 years. And we've all known it because we're invited up to be a part of it, all met, visited many, many times. And so Trevor talks about he didn't take a job in the NFL. He didn't even move. He didn't get he could have got a bigger house. He could have gotten he's in the same home. And it just hit me when Trevor was saying that he passed away this morning in that home that he'd been in. And that's just another legacy of what, the consistency and just the rootedness of LaVell is part of what we talk about here. It's such an impact for an unrooted world in many ways today. To have a guy you can talk about as so rooted in what in every way that he was. And so I know we're BYU guys and we're going to be, too flowery, but there's real truth here. And I want people to know LaVell as many might not know him as well.
And Steve, I'm so glad that you mentioned Patty, because you can tell a lot by the quality of the woman who loves a man. And one of the best compliments that I can give LaVell is that Patty loved him since the day she met him.
Trevor,
Steve. I talked to her yesterday. I talked to Patty yesterday, and they were if you knew LaVell, you knew Patty, and they're together, and she was at peace yesterday, and so anyway, I think we've covered all the pieces of it. But thank you for having a chance to talk about it on ESPN.
No, Steve, Trevor, thank you guys. Obviously a difficult moment for both of you, but thank you for allowing us to know a little bit more about LaVell Edwards that goes beyond his Hall of Fame numbers. Trevor, Steve, our condolences to you and the rest of the BYU family and to everyone in the state of Utah. LaVell Edwards was 86 years old.